So we might find a good character paired with our Porum here in just a minute as our runners get underway. And there's a couple other little things about this flag set that we will point out as the race goes on. But our runners are off, and let's see what we got here. And it looks like a fast start to me. Our runners, our second character is an Edge, and they are immediately granted the Magma Key, which is going to give them that underground access as well. So we are off to the races here, figuratively and literally.
There are going to be a lot of checks open now as far as trying to find that Darkness Crystal. There's also a free key item over with Eddie in the bed. So it'll be interesting to see what people do off the open here.
Yeah, so this flag set does not have any of those. All the lunch is free today, so free key item from Edward, as PK mentioned. Free characters wherever you would find characters in the vanilla game. Now we have that free underworld access with the Magma Key. So I think one of the most interesting things for me as our runners get underway here is seeing how our runners are going to balance doing key item checks versus exploration, because they have that Edge, a very powerful beginning character here, and you would think that they will be able to handle quite a few of the early spots here.
It's definitely going to be interesting, and as far as the loot system goes, you're seeing Woobear trying to loot below the castle, and there is just nothing there for him because only 30% of these chests are going to contain anything, although what they do contain is going to be any potential item that's out there, so there's no gating on them at all.
Yeah, and a big development here. I think we have Dia checking the Edward key item now, but Edward has the Darkness Crystal. So as has been mentioned in chat, our runners now have access to all areas of the world, and now it's just going to be a matter of powering up and defeating those moon bosses.
At this point, really, there's nothing left for them to do besides try to defeat those bosses. Obviously, we're going to have to try to figure out what characters are where. But there's nothing stopping them, at least from going up to the moon, besides the fact that they're not quite ready to take on any of those bosses, I would imagine.
No, probably not. But yeah, it's all about getting on a good curve here at this point, as far as getting the characters that you want and the experience that you need. So we saw Valvalis get a Palom, I believe, from Watery Pass. Simbu actually says no to that Palom for now. And he did get the two characters in Mysidia, although I did not catch which characters they were. It looks like a Rydia and a Palom, so maybe that's why. Meanwhile, Woobear is doing Antlion Cave and finding vanilla Antlion.
Looks like he chose not to go and get that darkness crystal off the open. These changes in all the seeds do, I think, apparently, or occasionally throw people off as to how best to begin, because I think people are so accustomed to, the no free key item, no free characters more available right off the open here than there were in the league flags or anything usually that these people have been running.
Yeah, that's definitely possible, and it also, we assume that our runners know all these flag sets, but they do get changed up week to week. A lot of times it can be hard to keep up with everything, so it is entirely possible. I've had it happen to me in races before where you just assume that the free lunch is off and it's actually on. So.
I think we can all attest to beating D-Mist and then going and trying to get a key item and then standing there for a hot second, realizing the mistake you made and flying over to the bed.
Yeah, absolutely. So Woobear is showing us the fair start, I think, to the seed, while everybody else is really just like Dia is already off to the moon here, it looks like, and Valvalis is also going to get those two other characters. Simbu finds a Sid in Damsian. I'm not sure if we had seen that yet. And Woobear found a Tella on Hobbs. So we're accounting for all of these free character checks pretty much right off the bat here.
is an interesting find. I know this is Sstandard, I believe, so there might be sirens that you can locate. But one of the best quick grind options is going to require someone with weak. And honestly, unless you're willing to defeat all the bosses to power Fu up all the way, Atella and then doing ordeals real quick will give you the chance to basically put your team in a position to kind of steamroll everything on the moon.
Yeah, and with that Tella on Hobbs, that is going to be a viable option for our runners. It will require them to complete ordeals because Tella will not get that weak spell until after his full spell list is unlocked. But as of right now, we haven't seen a Fu yet, so it looks like Wubear is going to get that free key item now.
There you go.
And yeah, and we'll see. Oh, well, he's going to check some chests, so let's not assume right away. But meanwhile, Simbu does have his Darkness Crystal, it looks like.
Okay, so everyone, or maybe has anyone else gone up there? Yeah, he has. So we're just waiting to see if Wubear grabs his, and then everyone will have potentially everything they need at least to gain access to all the 6 bosses they need to defeat.
Yeah, and Valvalis is actually headed underground. Wubear just exited out of the castle without checking Edward, so we'll see about that whole the theory may be holding, but we'll see. And Dia actually was just raising the whale, was not actually going to the moon yet, and now is headed to ordeals, or stopped at ordeals. We'll see what she decides to do next. Looks like maybe going underground as well. It's really, really hard. I will just attest to as a regular runner of this game. Invenerable, who is one of our off-stream runners tonight, is notorious for rolling seeds like this, where the entire world is opened up to you immediately, and you as a runner just have absolutely no idea what is the best way to progress forward.
This is going to make for some interesting choices. It's really going to come down to how they try to get the experience before they go for these bosses. And one of the unique things, particularly with these flags, is the path to Bahamut isn't just walking over and checking the character. You're going to have to go through a few fights just to get in there. So if you can't deal out some real damage, there's no free boss there at all.
It's true, yeah. A couple other things we haven't mentioned yet, because we're kind of going through some of the different ways that you can get XP here. We know that the D-Machine grind is one of the things that we talked about. Now that you have the Darkness Crystal, you need a source of weak, but that's about really the only requirement. And if you know how to do the fight, it's pretty safe, regardless of what your levels are. Another possibility is sirens. That's come up a little bit as well. I don't think we've seen sirens in shops yet. I'll keep an eye on chat in case we did miss them. But that's another reason to maybe get like quickly underground to sort of check more shops there. Some other options are going up to the moon and maybe trying to find a free boss like Queen and King Eblin at a really high XP spot, and that'll get you a nice boost in your levels. And then you could also another thing, it's not really a strategy, but another thing you could see our runners do is just try to farm a bunch of key items really quickly. Get up to 10 key items, you get double XP, and that just makes everything else easier the rest of the way. So there's a ton of different ways that you can really put this puzzle together in terms of getting the experience that you need.
Part of me was hoping that this wouldn't turn into a jet seed, knowing that I was going to commentate on it, but with the way these flags are set up, it could take everybody quite some time before they're even willing to, take on some of the tougher bosses that we might find on the moon, because a bad Evil Wall or Knazo and one free boss on the moon, if you're not getting double XP and you're not that much closer to winning that fight.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could still stretch out quite a bit. And one of the other cool things that I think we're going to see as the race goes along, you're going to see our runners just go in so many different directions. A lot of the races that we've got, especially with runners that are of comparable skill level, and I would say, knowing all 4 of these runners in the race, they're all highly talented, very, very capable of picking apart a seed. But a lot of times in races like that, you will see kind of everybody overlapping and doing the same things over and over. In this race, I would be very surprised if that was the case. I think our runners are going to be making very divergent and different choices from each other throughout the course of this race.
There are sirens down in the Fey March. Interesting.
That is interesting, and I will just say from a commentator's perspective, I'm a little disappointed just because we may see one or more of our runners end up in a fairly significant grind, like eggs or something like that. Now that being said, we only have 30% of chests filled, and so money is going to be hard to come by in all likelihood. So that does make it more difficult to go that route.
And gear as well is going to be an interesting thing to watch for, because one Stardust Rod, I haven't seen a Cecil yet, but there are definitely a particularly few pieces of gear that could really change the amount of damage that somebody can put out or the amount of healing depending on what it is. And that could be a big game changer for any of these people with the right sword.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to mention, you know, Edge's ninja swords would be really good. The spoon flag is on. If we find an Edward and we find a spoon, that's another thing that could really, I mean, it's just so much damage. Could trivialize a lot of what our runners might come up against. But here's hoping we will see a lot of fair and exciting boss fights, especially once we get up on the moon.
I think that's really what we're hoping for now, is some very, very mean bosses up on the moon. The hook was the item that was down in the Fey March, so it looks like Valvalis is taking that. I was kind of hoping they wouldn't find sirens there, because that would incentivize, you know, going and making this check, but then there's also a character down there, and I don't think they would mind finding Cecil or someone else that can also deal more physical damage, because that seems to be lacking right now.
That's true, and I will say, watching Simbu, I know Simbu quite well as a 2v2 partner of his for quite a while. He has all the pieces of the puzzle that he needs right now, and I will just be honest in saying I'm a little bit surprised that he is not just beelining for ordeals, getting that week on his Tela and going to D-Machine grind. So, oh, and I just saw an Avenger in the Fagul shop. But anyway, I'm a little surprised by that. Maybe there's something else that he is thinking about. We'll be sure to ask him about that later. Maybe, I think one of our questions for all of our runners is just going to be like, okay, you got the magma key, you got the darkness crystal. What was your thought process for how to get through the rest of the seed from there?
What's left on your checklist there? Because yeah, with the Fu and with the week, I mean, I think checking down in Eblin Cave, even potentially Eblin Castle, if what you're looking for is gear, is there's an Eddie, and it doesn't look like Valvalis really cares too much for him. But those are two very, very high possibility locations for gear. The cave and the castle. I know Simbu, I've spoken with him a lot about it. He thinks that they're almost broken and how good the gear is down there. But with only 30%, it's really a gamble.
Yeah, I think when you have a gear light seed like this, you want casters because they don't really care as much about gear, and having a Palom in particular seems extremely strong to me for later on. So, I mean, you might need to round out your party a little bit more than that, but you got a good source of damage, you've got a white mage, you've got Edge, who doesn't need a whole lot to really get going. So, I mean, we'll see what our runners ultimately decide to do and when they decide to pull the trigger on either their grind or their moon exploration. But it does seem a little bit right now like there's nobody that's really just like attacking this seed. And as I say that, we do see Simbu going up ordeals now. So.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I personally am a little surprised we haven't seen anybody hop up to the moon at least to check. Has anyone gone up to check the shop or the character yet?
No, I think, well, it looks like Valvalis might be doing that now. Dia raised the whale, but I don't believe she went up to the moon, so it looks like Valvalis is going to be the first here.
And Dia also going up ordeals, so looking for that weak spell. With the introduction of the sirens down in the Fey March, at least the paths are kind of going to diverge in two different ways. So we're going to have to see what's faster and how long it's going to take them to get through these ordeals bosses, because, well, they have a decent amount of levels. Valvalis right here is not exactly who you would hope to run into when you're trying to go fast.
It is going to be a slow fight for sure, but Valvalis at least doesn't have the evasion in the spot that she does in a lot of the other places that you can find her. So it's just going to take a little bit of time, but it won't be unbeatable by any stretch.
Check one boss off the list that I was hoping might be somewhere in the lunar subterranean waiting.
Yeah, there's still plenty of other evil bosses we can hope for.
I'm sure some of our wishes will come true. But the D-Machine grind will be the expected route, I would say, for Simbu, because it doesn't look like he even took the time to go down to the Fey March. He doesn't appear to have the hook. So for him, he doesn't even know whether there are sirens or not. But the amount of experience you can get out of that D-Machine grind, and I don't necessarily blame him.
Yeah, if you're just planning on doing the D-Machine grind and then going to the moon, like, there's actually no reason you need to go underground in this seed, which is just the weirdest thing to think about saying. You know, how many FF4 free enterprise seeds have folks seen where the underground was not required? We've seen plenty of seeds where the moon was not required, but I can't even think of, well, that's not true. I can think of one seed, although it was a forge seed, so technically the moon or the underground is still required, but it's so rare that, like, you don't have to do work in the underground in order to finish the seed.
Typically at this point, I mean, everyone, if you had found that magma key early, everyone would be underground trying to work on something. But at this point, we're just trying to figure out who's going to be the first one to give up on all of this stuff and just head up to the moon.
Yeah, and I think Valvalis looks like was just doing some checking around up there, and yeah, back on the blue planet, checking out what's going on there. Meanwhile, Simbu has run into this fight is a little bit hazardous, I would say, with the Magus Sisters. If they get a spell off on a character that you do not want them to get, like, a virus off on, it can be a little scary, but I think our runners should be able to handle this without too much trouble.
The wall on this central sister, okay, Edge is just not going to have any issues with that at all. But you can find yourself in some problematic situations against them.
Yeah, I didn't realize that Simbu had a mute knife, although I think he did have to swap it from Palom onto Edge, which was kind of interesting to see mid-battle. A nice little bit of tech there from Simbu. Oh man, and Dia, meanwhile, that's another boss that I was really hoping we'd see on the moon, and Golbez is in the Legend Sword chamber here on top of Ordeals, so that is another one that we will not be seeing in a slightly more dangerous spot.
That's also too bad, although he's going to serve kind of his vanilla purpose, which is just waste everybody's time talking and then kind of eventually losing. Seeing Valvalis take that tele makes me think we might be seeing everybody heading over to Ordeals right now, because I don't know what other reason you take a tele for right there.
Yeah, well, and you certainly don't do Ordeals if you are in a jet seed and you don't need to do Ordeals, so this is definitely looking like D-Machine grinds, at least from our 3 runners that are currently on Ordeals.
There was an adamant armor was that Sheila 1 they're saying in chat?
Yeah, I was just going to point that out as well. So our folks that did actually take the time to go underground, at least they got a very nice reward to show for that.
Oh, and considering, you know, that you had everything that you needed, that is an interesting check to make, because that's really the best possible reward you can fathom from that. Unless you were looking for maybe like an Earth Crystal because you wanted more characters for your party, but that's... And I gotta give Valvalis credit for just riding around in the whale.
Hey, so, you know, That's some style points right there for sure. And absolutely, like, once you have go mode, I mean, you honestly want every check that you get to be like, you know, Stardust Rod, Crystal Rig, Masamune, Adamant Armor.
Yeah, I mean, you're rooting for the things you definitely typically would not be rooting for. Soma drops. Those would be nice, but I don't think anyone's gonna have enough money to buy more than a few sirens with this seed.
Yeah, and I do think that is a reason that's going to push our runners to do that D machine grind as well. Is doesn't really matter about the money and such. So, but anyway, we've got looks like Dia's all set to go. Simbu is all done. Woobear is about to fight Golbez, and Valvalis is heading up Ordeals.
Not surprising. I think with Itella in that early of a spot and already having Darkness Crystal in hand, I can't blame them for this strategy. But you got to wonder how everyone else is going to do this. If you were one of the few who went down and got a siren or two, like you had said earlier, Blaze, maybe you just go up to the moon, try to get one quick grind fight in, and then look around for some free bosses and start, trying to gain time.
Yeah, it's a huge difference between going to the moon early when you don't have access to that D machine grind and then having moon access and a source of weak. It just makes all the difference in the world. So, I mean, this is really, I would say at this point, in terms of how people understand free enterprise, this is a pretty textbook play that most of our runners seem to be making. But that being said, D machine grind, for those of you who aren't super familiar with it, it does take a lot of practice and it does take a lot of precision. So we'll see how our runners handle it, and hopefully they will all have a nice, successful, big bump in XP.
Interesting to see if somebody who does have, I see Simbu has one siren, but that's probably not going to be enough in his mind. But if you picked up a couple of those, maybe you get the weak, because that will make Gold Dragon grind a lot easier if you were to just go directly to the moon. So it's there.
Yeah, for sure. You do also, with the Gold Dragon grind, hourglasses help, and we haven't seen those in particular. You could also just use that weak spell on the eggs in the underground. I did also see Artemis arrows. Our runners seem to be running around, at least a few of them, with those. So there's some pretty nice options for a couple of those different siren grinds that we like, but one of the biggest changes, in my opinion, with the new beta flag sets is the rebalancing of some of these items like sirens and hourglasses and coffins, making them much harder to find. And I think pretty much gone are the days that, a lot of us who have been playing the game for a while are used to, where it's like, okay, let's get a stack of sirens and a stack of hourglasses and, equals profit. So I think that's pretty much gone in this new version 4.0 of FF4FE.
Yeah, S Pro, turning off J items in shops, things like that, definitely change, the whole meta of it, or, even the value of checking most of the shops once you found, maybe Lifes and Cure 2s.
I mean, I get so excited when I find an hourglass in a chest now. Like, it's not even funny. Like, I'm just like, yes, one free fight, and it's like, it used to just be like you could load up on those and never ever had to worry about any of that. So it's pretty funny.
The bosses that, sometimes were free certainly aren't quite as free in some of the, the trap chest grind fights and things like that, where, all you needed was one of those in your inventory and you're good to go. My favorite was the last D machine grind I did rewarded me with an Hourglass 3. And it was one of those situations where it's like, well, I appreciate that you gave it to me, but now I don't need it anymore. And it seems to be the only place I'm going to find these things.
Now that you mentioned that, I actually did notice that too, and I had a similar reaction in probably like a practice seat or something that I was doing a while ago. But yeah, that's actually... I don't know if that was always part of the loot table or like how that found its way in there, but yeah, that's totally a thing that can happen now.
It's definitely like, thanks for that. It would have been helpful at any other point. I feel like Board probably threw that in just, as a wink and a nod to everybody forced to do that grind because they knew they had no other options available.
That's a very cheeky thing if that is what he did. It would not surprise me. So we got Dia here doing our first D machine grind. It looks like Simbu, I suspect, was changing his party around a little bit in order to get some characters that he can slingshot. Also, he has Edward in the spoon now, so that is also a thing that Simbu has going for him. Found life potions, another actual requirement of the D machine grind that can surprisingly, yeah, you gotta have those too. So, sold as Avenger, getting some more life potions. Yeah, we are, making choices and getting through this seed.
Of course, he picks up an Eddie. I mean, with the spoon, Eddie is okay, but when you have to fight through these behemoths and everything else, it's not like he has the XP growth. But Simbu is just somebody who's going to find a way to use that hide mechanism to his advantage. Whether it seems like the right play or not, he makes it the right play.
Absolutely, and the funny thing here is he actually has ditched his edge for that Edward, so he is all in on Edwards and Palom from the look of things here. Does have Edwards and one of those Paloms set up to get double XP from this grind fight as well, which is going to help. The new XP formulations are a little bit different than how they used to be. Before, in the older version of the game, if the difference was 5 levels, you would get double XP, and if it was 10 levels, you would get triple XP. Now it's just the 5-level double XP tier, so there's no more triple XP for those ridiculous slingshots, but it's still nice bonus XP, and it's definitely a good thing.
That was something that was crossing my mind the last few D machine grinds I'd done, or watching Dia getting set up in this D machine grind, is that it doesn't look like they have somebody in particular that's going to get slingshotted as far as I can tell. So it's normal XP growth. So to get those 2 Paloms up to what you're looking for, which is probably Nuke, it's gonna be a lot of D machines.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, and I wasn't sure the reason for that necessarily, because you could certainly have rescued a character, you certainly could have killed a character, and in some of those boss fights they were doing earlier. I do also just want to give a quick shout out to Woobear fighting the new alt gauntlet. That is another new thing in the new beta version of the game.
Woobear has to be looking for maybe a Yang or a Cecil. Who else haven't we seen so far?
I am not convinced Woobear got that free key item.
Oh, you're right. Oh.
And unfortunately, there's another boss that I wanted to see on the moon, but nope, we got Kanazo here in the Dwarf Castle throne room. So at least Woobear is giving us a little bit more excitement, some different boss fights and things like that.
Shouldn't be a problem for Edge. It's going to be a problem for Woobear if we don't see Derek Missington, our good friend, until somewhere in the lower lunar subterranean, because he's not going to realize that that's a key item check, I would assume, until you find Demist, because that's the only time, if you haven't thought of it already, that's what's going to trigger you going to check and realizing it's not there.
Yeah, I think you're right, unfortunately. And so, we'll just see what he decides to do. Might have an epiphany at some point. He has been getting free characters for the entire seed. I mean, to me, that's the kind of thing where it'd be like, if I was getting free characters, I would be going back to check the flags and be like, wait a minute, is that the only thing that I'm getting for free in this seed? So, and yeah, reading the flag says important, as Scala Kitty points out in chat. One other thing I also just want to shout out, because I see Pidge in chat, Pidge01. Pidge created a experience calculator, and it is still a really, really useful tool for the game. If I know Simbu has Pidge's XP calculator, sitting on a different screen right now, or somewhere where he has access to it, and he knows exactly how many D machines he needs to kill here. And Dia might as well. I don't know, but I know Simbu better, and I know that he's almost certainly got that. XP calculator sitting there with the magic number.
See if he gets these double life. Nope, he's not going to get it here. You can really speed this up if you manage to pull off 2 lives on any particular D machine. Not a simple task, because I think there's a lot of random elements in it with not having full control over your party, but that would certainly speed things up for him.
It's really, really difficult to do. I will say from experience, but yeah, we'll see if anybody can pull off the fabled double at any point in the Steam Machine fight. Meanwhile, Woobear is back in Troya, but unfortunately, I think it's because Woobear has the Earth Crystal now. So
hey, maybe he finds himself, because the Troya Treasury is the most vaunted area, I would say, in these new flag sets, as far as a place to find gear even when it's depleted, because there are just a lot of chests there, and there are a lot of good things to pick up.
That is very true, and nobody else will have access to this treasury, so we'll see what he finds down here.
He does end up going up. If he finds a crystal sword and a Cecil, compared to what everybody else is running with, he might have a good chance, because I mean those behemoths in Cave Bahamut are no joke.
That's true, and that is one of the little flags we haven't talked about yet, and I'm sure we'll see that in a little bit here when our runners head up there. Now, that being said, behemoths are not too bad if you know how to handle them, so I think we'll see some really nice behemoth strats a little bit later on. But yeah, the Steam Machine fight is continuing. It looks like Dia's just ended, actually, so we shall see, although I do see one of those palums is on the ground, so I assume that was intentional. Maybe
I saw Cure 4 as far as one of the Porums went. It doesn't look like they got all the way up to white.
Hey, there's that hourglass you were talking about.
Yes, just in time. Just in time. Well, if Dia has any sirens and decides she needs a little more XP, at least that's going to be free. Maybe not using the calculator there. I didn't see exactly what everybody ended up with, but that's the thing with the non-slingshot experience and everything else in the beta seeds is, yeah, I mean, even the D machine grind is really a grind if you want to get all the way up to those top levels.
Yeah, it really is, and this is going to be a longer D machine grind fight for sure because of the no access to that triple XP. Definitely have all the tools that our runners need. Ether 2s was another thing that was conveniently available in that same shop, I'm pretty sure, in Mysidia that had the life potions, so it was kind of like a one-stop D machine grind store. But yeah, we'll probably see Simbu here for at least a little while longer. Dia getting all the way up to Cure 4 is pretty solid, especially because fighting through all these behemoths, fighting through these moon bosses, there's a lot more XP that you're going to get on your party as well. So, I mean, we may see some of our runners end up with like some pretty ridiculously high levels by the time they're headed to Zerhomis.
It's going to be interesting. That's my one very unique thing I think about the behemoth fight is, if you have one person who can deal really, really good physical damage, like a Cecil with a crystal sword, then you're really going to trivialize those fights. Whereas, if your edge is only doing 1800 or 2200, you have to put up with several more counterattacks that are going to be very devastating.
Absolutely, and yeah, we'll see some of the strategies here. We'll see what what Dia decides to do.
Edge and
yeah, generally for behemoths, and it looks like this is kind of Dia's plan. Although I did remember the last time I was fighting behemoths, permadeath was involved. But basically, how behemoths works is there's 1 or 2 times in the fight where they will actually attack on their own. Otherwise, they only counterattack. So it gives you time to get set up for kind of like a pretty defensive fight, and then just only attack with your main DPS. And you can use blink and other things to kind of mitigate some of those counterattacks. Dia fought that pretty aggressively. Looks like she was thinking more just, let's get through them. This isn't really like the main source of XP that I need anyway, so...
I thought your edge only took 1 damage from the counterattack.
I mean, that's got to be the adamant armor.
Yeah, that's a game changer. Keep forgetting that. I mean, 'cause she was the only one who went and got that, so that's it. I mean, of all the things you might want, assessed with a crystal sword is second to anyone wearing an adamant armor.
Yeah, this and again, like, if Dia really wanted to, and I know she knows this, so I think it's mostly just like, let's power through this. But I mean, you can blink up all your other characters, or you can not use Berserk on Edge, and you can preserve the health of everybody else. So I mean, there's ways that you can do these behemoth fights that are fairly low risk, but clearly choosing to go more of like an aggressive route. Meanwhile, Valvalis throwing the spoon at Behemoth. He,
on the other hand, yeah.
Speaking of aggressive, but of course not having a Eddie. But I mean, this is also going to be interesting because I've not seen a Behemoth kind of used as a pretty like fast grind spot here essentially. But it looks like Valvalis's plan is just to fight with Edge and use everybody else to use life potions and things like that, and then this will be a nice XP bump as well for his characters.
Well, this is the issue with the fight. As far as I was discussing before, is this isn't a free fight at all, particularly if your edge is only hitting for about 800, because you're gonna have to hit about 20 times.
Yeah, I mean, it is a viable strategy, as long as the Behemoth's not too fast here. We'll see. I don't know if I think he'll be able to finish it out, but it's going to take an awful lot of life potions.
Depending, because this is actually one of the ones where you don't want your characters to be relative agility 1, because it actually speeds up the scripted attacks by the behemoths.
Yeah, it's tough to keep track of all that stuff, but you're exactly right. I think Valvalis would also really be preferring that his edge was doing some more damage here. Yeah, and there's a reset. So I think it was a good strategy going into it. At least in theory, maybe not so much in practice. So we'll see what he decides to do.
I'm assuming that he's gonna go over and try to maybe do some grinding, in the lunar subterranean. Maybe you look for some bosses there.
I mean, I think I saw an Hourglass, so I mean, he could certainly just do a Siren Hourglass weak fight and get a nice boost that way, and then I think you can probably handle one of those behemoths without too much trouble.
I believe I saw that as well, and meanwhile, Dia has made it to Rubicant. Appears to be in the Bahamut spot, which not the most free fight, but certainly not going to put up too much of a struggle against this party that she has. And okay, it looks like Simbu's making his way over to the behemoths.
Yep, so Simbu got, he definitely overshot Nuke on that Palom, but he has got himself an Edward with a spoon and a Palom with Nuke, and that is also going to be, very, very trivializing to these behemoth fights. So, and Dia has taken care of that Rubicant, no problem. And we'll be heading over, I can assume now, to the main part of the lunar subterrane and going after those other bosses, and we'll see what else is out there. I'm trying to think of what some problematic bosses could be for our runners in those spots. I would say Ogopogo for sure. I don't know. What if you were in their position, PK? What do you think?
I would be concerned that Evil Wall is lurking somewhere deep in the lunar subterrane.
Oh yeah, that's another good one.
That would be the one that would scare me. Ogopogo always scary, particularly the further you get away from a save point. Because that opening damage, you know, it doesn't matter how much health your team has. That opening damage followed by those waves. If you don't have nuke on everybody and somebody that's putting on a lot of damage, then you don't stand that great of a chance.
Yeah, I could see Ogopogo being very, very hazardous. Kanazo would have been another one I would have picked. Golbez would have been another one I would have picked. Unfortunately, we've seen both of those already. Baigen could be pretty bad, although I feel like we also saw Baigen already. I like Evil Wall. Evil Wall is a good choice. What do you think, chat? Who are you hoping that we see down here deeper in the lunar subterrane?
We're at least able to eliminate things in two separate directions as we see Woobear apparently climbing down from the tower.
He did get a foo somewhere, so again, like, you know, good for Woobear. He is fighting the good fight here.
He'll be hopefully ready to a degree to just go right on up to the moon whenever. And here goes the Fame Arch. So, okay. Off on his own personal exploration adventure. There's an Evil Wall.
Yeah, so you called that one. That was a good pick. Yeah, Woobear's kind of doing like the opposite, like the reverse image of the seed. So, you know, he's doing all of the stuff that's not on the moon, and all of our other runners are doing all the things that are on the moon. It's just unfortunate that the moon is the required part of the seed, and so yeah, but it'll be nice to see some of what else is lurking. I don't think anybody checked those Fame Arch bosses, so we'll see. I assume he'll check those.
We'll pick up Sirens and Starbills, or just Starbills. And Simbu with this Spoon Eddie play. His Eddie is 1900 HP. That grind must have really propped him up. I don't know what level that Edward is at, but it's higher than I've ever gotten at Edward in any of my experience playing this game.
I mean, as someone who played a lot of Edward %, that's somewhere in the high 50s, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, he really went to town on those D machines, and yeah, his party is good to go here. And we'll just kind of see if any of these bosses present interesting challenges. One that I didn't mention was Wyvern, although Wyvern could be interesting because we have the Whichburn flag on, so we don't know. It could be a bad one. We could get a bad Wyvern opening. That would be a very fun development, I would say.
The probability isn't super high, but I mean, some of those burns are at least as bad. If not worse than just taking a mega nuke and having to reset out.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of personal experience with evil, awful witch burns, but I know that they definitely exist. So I'm holding out hope against hope here.
That's a great post in the Discord. I don't remember exactly who it was. Maybe it was Flurry, but his whole party got charmed.
I do remember that one. That was fantastic.
Spinning around in circles. Snafety, I don't know, but I sure hope it could. These people down
here. I saw Retreat, yeah. Big Bang is one, Pidge mentioning Retreat. I saw Retreat recently, which was comical because I believe it was a seed where I needed to defeat the Wyvern, and I was like, oh, that was easy.
Ran into that, but I had such high I had such high attack that I had gotten a fair amount of the damage off that I needed, and the wyvern just ran away. I was like, "Come on, buddy, let me at least get the satisfaction of killing you."
It's unfortunate when the wyvern sees his shadow and disappears for 6 more weeks.
Back up in a meaner, more required location.
Yeah, Woobear picks up the Baron key there from Ashura at the slightly French vanilla spot, and again, just kind of like opens up more stuff that is not going to be beneficial to figuring out where the Darkness Crystal actually is.
Assuming that Woobear was keeping track, this is still 2 more boss checks that could be demissed. I think you gotta hope that Demas shows up soon.
I mean, another thing that could happen that would tip Woobear off is somebody finishing. And I mean, seeing how quickly Dia is getting through this moon, it would not shock me if we had somebody finish right around the hour mark. Because as we've talked about, I mean, once they get through this gauntlet of moon bosses and behemoths, nothing is going to stop in their way, including Zeronis.
CPU is a fun one, though. I wouldn't say it's the most difficult boss, but it is certainly going to be time-consuming for a party of mages in one edge. Yep, that's when you start throwing everything you have in your inventory at it.
Oh yeah.
But that's a fun strat. See what Dia did there, Blaze?
I looked down for just a second, and I think I missed it.
She reflected a float off of a walled member of her team and ended up catching the attacker as opposed to the CPU, so now Quake is on the table.
Oh yeah, that is a great thing when that happens. And yeah, 50-50 chance, the way that mechanically it works. So Dia getting lucky. We'll see if Simbu has the same luck, because that can be one of those little mini RNG things that can actually make a difference in a race like this.
Definitely, and given the party setup, there's no reason not to at least try it, because worst case, you float the wrong person and then you're just stuck, still with Edge basically dealing out all the damage because CPU has that wall up. So unless you have a Medio, it's only physical attacking, which is the one thing I will say everyone is lacking, at least at this point.
Yeah, except for me, Simbu, I like Simbu's setup with the Edward with the spoon. I don't know if it's going to be enough to overcome the fact that Dia is a full moon boss ahead of him at this point, but depending on what the final bosses are, that could be a factor.
True. I mean, who would you rather have, Blaze, a high 50s Eddie with the spoon, or a low 50s Edge with an adamant armor?
I mean, I think the adamant armor is like the big equalizer there, in the sense that if it was just Edward with the spoon versus Edge with, I don't think I've seen a ton of the good Edge swords or anything like that. So, I mean, in that situation, I would absolutely take Edward, but with the adamant armor, it's pretty equal at that point. So,
as far as I love Simbu's play, and it was really a gamble to go Sheila 1 when you already had Darkness Crystal. Hang out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really curious to sort of hear what our runners were doing or looking for in that time period between when they had the Darkness Crystal and Tella and when they ultimately decided to go D-Machine. Because, I mean, there's certainly some setup that you need to do there in terms of, I mean, obviously you have to do ordeals, you have to get your levels right so that you can slingshot ideally, and you want to make sure that you have the characters that you want to bring to the end of the game. But aside from that, I definitely saw some of our runners going and doing other things. Maybe it was like shopping, maybe it was just kind of making sure you didn't miss something obvious, but yeah, there were definitely some it wasn't as direct as I would have expected maybe to see from somebody once they had those pieces in hand.
Definitely. And Megalith asked, or maybe said, it's not just, at least in my mind, it's not just raw damage, but it's armor, and then also Edge's HP growth. As far as actually fighting Zeromus at the end compared to Eddie is just going to be, you're going to have someone with close to 3,000 HP versus somebody with 2,000 HP. And, one big bang with a terrible roll on that Eddie, and, you're giving up at least a lot of times, if not, losing that fight entirely.
It's true. There's a little bit of consideration there. I would say, there's our Wyvern. Let's see what we get here. I'm going to be quiet for a second.
Oh, I thought it was stone.
Oh, is it just petrify?
Petrify. It's the same animation. I was really hoping for something absolutely nasty.
Everyone got stone feet, stone boots.
Let's just hope they don't fall into a lake before the end of this fight.
Yeah, everybody getting some cement shoes from Wyvern tonight. That's actually really funny. I doubt Wyvern has the ability to do full party stone as Whichburn, but that is pretty amazing.
I wonder. I mean, that would be, better or worse than they can do. I don't think you can reflect that, can you?
I'd have to try it. I feel like you probably can, but I don't think we don't really have to fight monsters that have full cast stone in the randomizer too much, so yeah.
The tower key. It does not look like she's going to get close to that 10 key item mark, which is going to be interesting. That Edge is a monster. HP growth is going to be interesting as far as, the second big bang if you don't manage to nerf it. That might give Simbu a chance to catch up.
Yeah, he really brute forced that CPU fight for sure. So we'll see. There's definitely plenty to go here, and we've got some other fantastic runners not on the main restream here as well. So nobody has finished yet, but I do suspect we will see our first finish within the next maybe 10 to 15 minutes or so.
It is true. There are 12, 14 people or so in this race.
That sounds right. I think 14 or 15.
Rubear, realizing the Darkness Crystal mistake, I'm sorry to interrupt, but has now decided to go and give the people what they want.
Maybe this was the plan all along.
Not all who wander are lost. They might be lost for most of it, but then they find a way. And we at least get what we want.
That is very, very true. And at least we have something that we can really tell him he brought to this race tonight and joke about it after the restream. That is for sure.
And it's not going to take him too long to get to the end of this either.
Oh, definitely not.
It is party comp at this point.
That is one of the interesting things you just made me think of when talking about how to approach a seed like this would be if you are thinking you'll get a foo, one of the ways that you might need to power that up is to do the bosses. But and so that would be an interesting decision that you might have to make if you have an early foo. But Woobear about to give us music.
That was always it's early foo or Tele and going up ordeals are the two real ways of getting weak where you benefit from doing that D machine grind. And okay, here we go. All right, I'm gonna be quiet here.
Same.
the slow run to the harp.
Yeah, that was a nice classic track right there. Meanwhile, while Woobear was regaling us, or Edward was regaling us on Woobear's feed, Dia has her crystal after defeating the Calbrainadals at the Ogopogo spot, and I suspect we'll just be running straight to Zeromus.
I'm with you there. If you're not ready now, you're not gonna go find another way to get ready. And hot on her tail. You did a very good job against Plague during that music, and gotta say that 1 Hourglass 3 really proved its worth.
Oh yeah,
right there at the end. Well, it maybe, all things serve a purpose, even that hourglass that you just kind of take out of sheer annoyance that it's offered to you at that point.
Well, there's always a use for an hourglass in this game, I have learned.
And I guess this is my first time on commentary, but I've watched a fair number of these, and I'm pretty sure, Blaze, that there's a question at this point in the race that is typically asked. I'm not sure if you know what that is.
Oh, I do, but if this is your first time doing comms, you've got to ask it. That is the rite of passage for sure, my friend.
Well, in that case, I'm gonna really hold it out. All right, I'm really interested. Whose butt is it that we're going to be kicking tonight?
Indeed, and with that crystal, Zeromus transforms into...
Deep breath.
Nice, we've got Pongmas, or Pongamus, excuse me, and it looks like Pongamus is currently winning 4-2. We will see if that changes in Dia's favor here over these first couple rounds of the fight. But yeah, another great Zeromus sprite from Scala Kitty, who is one of the main lead developers of this game. I didn't quite see what happened there, but I do see that Dia lost one of her white mages, although she has a spare, so all is not lost. But yeah, still, I would say probably has about a 60 to 90 second lead on Simbu here. Simbu has the spoon and 2 nuking palums, whereas Dia only has 1 and has Edge, although Edge does have that adamant armor. So we will see if that makes a difference. Also, an underleveled Rosa there as well. So Simbu's party looks a lot more solid to me than Dia's does, but Dia knows what she's doing in this Zeromus fight. And Dia's whole party almost loses her whole party. Does get that Porum back up. Porum should be able to cover the team here, but this is a little bit rough out of the gate, and this could be the opening that Simbu needs, especially if he is able to run a much cleaner Zeromus fight. And I certainly don't see anything on Simbu's side that is going to prevent him from that, because he's got himself a nice Tela agility anchor face down for reasons. And then the two nukers, Eddie with the spoon, and a nice high-level Porum there to help out with the damage and healing duties. Dia has held into this fight really, really well, so we'll see if she can pull it out. It's just all this recovery time is giving Simbu that opening to maybe squeak out the win here. Meanwhile, Wubear is up on the moon now. I did not catch when that happened, but it must have just been in the last few minutes here after doing a Twin Harp, and he is going to be able to progress to the game in fairly short order, I would guess, as well here. I do think Dia's got this under control at the moment. I don't want to commentators curse her, but this does seem pretty stable at this point. As another Big Bang comes out, I hope it got nerfed. I didn't see it. Oh no, yeah, that's on me. I will take responsibility for that, unfortunately. And without saving as well. Oh no. Poor Dia. And meanwhile, we got the crack boom on Simbu's screen. Simbu finishes in first place on the restream and in the race with a time of 1:01:58. So GG's to Simbu on that first place finish. We've got our other runners all on the moon here. Dia doing some of these refights, unfortunately, but I think we know that her party is more than capable of handling this. I think that's probably going to sting a little bit, unfortunately, being in the Zeromus fight and seeing Simbu with that dot done right around the time that she wiped. But Dia's got this. She is going to take care of this and bring it home. So, and we are joined in the commentary booth by Simbu. GG's and congrats on that first place finish tonight.
Thank you.
So, what did you think getting that magma key right out of the gate and then getting the darkness crystal almost immediately afterwards tonight?
It was definitely interesting. I didn't have any plans of pursuing the magma key too early. I think it's a little bit funny that it was a magma key start and I never used it, but yeah, I know that we had 3 characters on, so my first priority was looking for characters, and we had that edge, and it's like, if I find something good for edge, then I can really do some good stuff, and then it's like, well, keep dreaming.
Yeah, that didn't really turn out. It was interesting to see how everybody kind of progressed through that early game, because there's so many things, and I'm sure the sirens and the lights were going off in your head right away when you saw that Tela about, you know, D-Machine, 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 but there's a lot of things that you need to actually make that D-Machine grind happen as well.
Yeah, that's definitely something I noticed is I found the tell and it's like, okay, D machine, we're almost there, but then I was like, wow, I have no money for life potions, I have no money for anything, so I was still holding out for Foo so that I didn't have to buy ethers and everything, but then it's like, well, now I'm kind of committed to Ordeals, and Ordeals' character wasn't Foo, so it's like, what can I do? And then I decided, you know, there was that Palom I saw, and then I was thinking I could also trade Rydia in for my Slingshot EXP, and then I saw that spoon, and it's like, no, I saw that Edward, we need an Edward, and
classic
he put some work out this season.
Classic Simbu Badman.
Yeah, but
I knew the minute that you were on this race that you were going to figure out a way to make it work with Edward. It's just the gears were spinning the whole time. Yeah, getting rid of the Foo seemed interesting. You didn't want to keep him just as a secondary damage dealer? Or I'm sorry, the Edge.
Yeah, with short swords, he's not that good, and I needed 2 spaces to slingshot, and it's like I could throw away one of my Paloms or one of my my Porom, but that was really risky, so it's like, you know, Edward's going to do so much more damage with the spoon than Edge is going to do without his best gear, so it felt like the right play to do.
Yeah, for sure. It was one of the interesting things that we saw on the stream because Dia did not get Edward in the spoon. The one thing that Dia had that you did not have is the Sheila 1 turn-in item was an adamant armor. So even though in terms of swords, the Edge was a little bit under-equipped, I think maybe Dia had a full moon, but Dia had the adamant armor, which made it a lot closer than I would have expected.
Yeah, adamant armor can do that. It's nice when you don't have to worry about dying to anything, but those moon bosses were nasty. I did not expect them to be that nasty with the resources I had.
Which ones in particular kind of surprised you? Because we were kind of calling out for ones that we were hoping for. We also saw a lot of the other bosses not on the moon on Woobear's side because I think he forgot that the free key item was on. So we knew like Golbez wasn't up there, we knew Kanazo wasn't up there, but I know PK called out Evil Wall, and that was one that we did see. So what did you think, Simbu? What were the hard ones on your end?
Yeah, Evil Wall is always nasty. For some reason, he has some weird priority where he seems to sometimes just get extra turns in against your characters if you don't have it properly berserked. I think he doesn't have the same weight script that everyone else does. So that one was definitely nasty, and I forget what was there, but I remember the Bahamut spot. Oh, Ruby was a little bit more nasty than I wanted him to be, especially after all those behemoths. It's like
you took a glare to Eddie in that fight, didn't you?
Yes. So that slowed me down a little bit. It wouldn't have been a problem if I had used Edward to be my anchor, but I was still using Tella to get everyone R81, but the Bahamut spot is slow, so I should have used an Edward anchor.
This was the anti-Eddie strats seat or flag set in that you had to fight all of these moon bosses, and then you figured it out anyway.
Yeah, I mean, with a spoon, Edward was doing more than I could ever hope for. Like, he was keeping everything perfectly in timed. I probably should have held back and did full reflect strats instead of zerking Edward as well. But I was like, you know, this is over. Let's just go out with a bang. Let's teach Zeromus a lesson here.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I was remarking while you were doing your D machine that I know you, and I know that you're pretty good about calculating just how much XP you want for your characters. It seemed like you maybe overshot it a little bit when I saw how much XP or how many hit points Callum had afterwards. Were you being super careful with that D machine grind, or were you just like, I'm gonna go for a while and then I'll be good?
So I will admit I lost count halfway in, but I still had a rough estimate. I did get a little bit more than I wanted, but I'm glad that I got a little bit more than I wanted, because what I was aiming for is for my Palom and my Porom to get up to White and Nuke, the other two in the back
Okay.
row, to get up there really soon after I got to Moon, and they got through there after I got through the behemoths. So that was honestly a blessing in disguise. I would have probably been okay taking 2 less D machines, but it would have definitely slowed down the Moon. So I think as many as I did was right. It's hard to call, but especially with one Palom with almost 3,000 HP, it's like you don't have to worry. You can take some risk and things. So that was really nice. Even with the gear, like I had no gear, no sorcerer's robes, no rings. I had 2 life staffs and a spoon. So
Yeah, it was one of the weirdest. It was kind of a little bit of a, we said, oh, everybody's got the darkness crystal just a few minutes in, and then but it's like, okay, and now what? Because they don't have any money. It seemed like the gear was not really aligning particularly well with the characters that
We
you
have no
had.
food. We have no jobs.
Yeah, like
The
it
weapon
was
is a spoon.
in a traditional, maybe non-beta seed, this would have been a cakewalk, frankly, but it did make it a lot more challenging and a lot more interesting for sure. So
yeah, I think the T-Sparse definitely upped the ante quite a bit, but I've also noticed that T-Wild, or what used to be T4, is not nearly as generous as it used to be. I feel like the weighting is more... It might just be my personal acknowledgement of the changes, but it really doesn't feel like it's the same. It feels like you're a lower chance to get an adamant armor or a high-powered crystal sword or something. I almost feel like T-Wildish is a higher tier than T-Wild just because you're more likely in some locations to get the goods. So it's been interesting with the beta. The rework has definitely changed some things up.
I'm with you there. And it feels like even the wild kind of gives some sort of advantage to the Troya Treasury. Some areas that already would have had top tier loot now just have only top tier loot.
I keep going back and forth on that because Eblon Castle and Troya Treasury are completely busted on T-Wild right now, and it's like, if you don't go there on T-Wildish, you're just done for. But on the other hand, if you play T-Standard or especially T-Standard, it goes back to what was T3, and that's what we're all most used to, and sometimes you get something wild like a Gungnir Spear because the rarity has changed, but it's definitely going to be interesting seeing what gets decided on for future matches and stuff.
yeah, it's interesting seeing the changes for sure, and it has changed some of the decision making a little bit. I'm curious from your perspective, when you see like the sparse 30 like in this flag set tonight, and you could come across a cache of chests and have them basically just all be empty, or empty / nothing useful. Does that make you want to check more chests, or does it make you just kind of shy away from the areas that have chests that you would normally go to?
I mean, you definitely need to loot the chest. It's been something weird for me because, especially for the chest locations that aren't chests, the like bookshelves and stuff, you go up and click on them and then nothing happens. And it's like, did I get it or not?
It's the worst feeling. I second that.
Yeah, it definitely feels really awkward. I'm still trying to get used to that. I've almost wanted to change my routing to avoid those locations, but then it's like they're everywhere. So
I don't know if you went under there, but I'm pretty sure Damsian in this seed, literally underneath Damsian, at least the bottom area had no actual openable chests or pots.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You run through there and it's like click, click, click. Did I actually click them, or did let's see, there's 9 locations down there, all 9 of them end up with nothing?
I mean, it is mathematically possible, so...
Yeah. So that's something that I've been trying to get used to, but it's definitely weird. I do think that makes me prefer locations like Feymarch where, oh, you at least can see the chests and know they're open. It also makes places like Eblon Castle really, really awkward because the trap chests obviously don't get cut in half. So now the ratio of trap chests goes way up, and it's like, I remember walking through the giant, I saw like 3 or 4 chests, and it's like, well, I almost want to loot here because of how many chests there are, but one of them is going to be the last arm, so...
Go from a 1 in 10 chance of it being the trap chest to a 1 in 3.
We should
at least
request.
mathematic.
We should request that this sparse also has the option to remove the trap chest. That's my theory. I'm gonna request that. I do just want to quickly cut in, Simbu. I have 1 or 2 more things I want to ask you if you have the time.
Sure.
But we've got Dia doing her refight of Zeromus here. Definitely looks like the party is a little more upright this time, so that's good. I'm not sure if maybe a different agility situation has been used. Valvalis, who has been just kind of brute forcing his way through the moon, finally cleared out Cave Bahamut, which is nice to see. And Woobear is making his way down and appears to be at the, I believe CP was at the Wyvern spot, so that's where we're at there. Yeah,
Anyone remotely close to 10.
I'm sorry, we also had a second place finish in Venerable with a time of 1:10:43, and Flurry finished in third place with a time of 1:15:20. So I think that kind of gets us all up to speed here on what's been going on while we've been chatting with Simbu here.
Woobear, Simbu, you might not know this, but there were sirens at the bottom of Feymarch. And I think Valvalis went up thinking that he could pick up experience as he went, and just kept losing to those behemoth fights without being able to put out, enough damage relative to the counterattack.
Yeah, that was something that troubled me this seed. It's like, I could go up there and get EXP, but I don't have an hourglass for the one siren I found, and I don't have... Like, I can kill the behemoths by spamming Blink for an hour, but I don't want to have Edge fighting for an hour trying to kill it. Edward would have certainly been able to kill the behemoths eventually since the spoon is so busted, but it's really quite interesting to think about. Like, with that particular setup and that party and no good Edge weapons...
What I think made your play so good was you needed a really one strong damage output to get past those behemoths, quickly.
Yeah.
Because magic isn't going to do it nearly as well.
Yeah, I think if
even Woobear didn't find anything good.
I think if the pass was in a shop and people could go down and fight the lower core and get the levels before going to Cave Bahamut, it would be a completely different race. But this is the one time the D Machine really paid off. It's been really awkward to do D Machine grinds recently because we lost the triple EXP bonus from 10 levels below, and that's been taking a lot of getting used to because it made it a maybe 10% play down to like a less than 5% play anymore because there's just no good slingshot potential.
And in the meantime, we also lost access to things like hourglasses and sirens and a lot of seeds. So it's pretty. So my last question for you, and then we have Dia finishing in 4th place with a time of 1:16:44. So we'll bring her in for just a second. But what was going through your mind when you saw that Wyvern with Whichburn? Were you hoping for something evil that you could kind of Simbu MacGyver your way through, or were you hoping for something that was just like, okay, let's just get this over with and move on?
I honestly didn't know Whichburn was on, so I was going for the standard stuff, and then it's like, oh, that's fine. I had the Tele Anchor, so I would have been completely fine, so no problems there. I could have just turned the battle speed down, but then it's like, Oh, I already popped that star bell, so let's reflect some nukes and just kill this thing for daring to upset me.
Were you concerned that Wyvern was casting stone on the rest of your party?
I
See, it
mean,
was
by
the
the
same
time it
animation. It
happened,
just when I had glanced over at whoever got there first, I was like, oh, he's Wyvern's casting stone on everybody. That's a new one.
yeah, I mean, if it had actually caused stone on everyone and ended the battle, that would have been interesting, but it just ended up being the gradual petrify, and it's like, oh, okay, whatever. By the time it happened, I had already seen the effect, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't need to reset, let's just reflect nukes.
Indeed. Yeah, but that was still kind of fun to see, because we were just like, PK and I were like, okay, well, what could happen here? What could be interesting? We were like, well, Wyvern might not be interesting unless it's a really crazy Witchburn. So I was just curious for your take on that. But thanks a lot for joining us, Simbu. Do you have any final thoughts on the race?
Yeah, one final thing. If that had been Media Wyvern and just completely wiped everyone, at least I had Edward. Edward would have saved me from anything Wyvern could possibly do. So
Yay
Edward
for Edward.
Edward best character. Anyway,
All right.
You're turning some people to that thought, but yeah, congratulations again. Well done. It's a pleasure to watch.
yeah, thanks for having me, guys, and have fun with the rest of the race.
Thanks, Simbu.
Woobear is now past Valvalis and
Yeah,
different strategies.
for sure. Yeah, the scenic
That was
route, I think, maybe is how we can describe that one later on. But
The
Valvalis, I
less
really
travel.
gotta. Oh, for sure. I really do have to hand it to Valvalis, though, with kind of taking the risk of not going for that obvious D machine grind and just trying to figure out a way to brute force some XP. I think with maybe a slightly different set of bosses, that could have worked out pretty well for him. And unfortunately, just there wasn't really anything easy this evening. So
Speaking of risks, Dia is here, and first question, I mean, what did you think when you ran Sheila 1 and you ended up with an adamant armor off of that? Is Dia here? The chat. Okay.
hey, Dia, yeah, we can't. I don't know if your mic is on, Dia, but yeah, in the meantime, we have Woobear on that final fight of, I believe the final fight for him of the Lunar Subterrane, and Valvalis is heading down, I believe, probably to the Wyvern spot.
So, yeah, I mean, the path less traveled by, sometimes it gets you there. It looks like Woobear has 10 key items. So, at least the XP growth going through those behemoths would offer some consolation, if not, I'm sure Woobear is not pleased running through the remainder of this. But, if you're going to find a consolation there, you're at least picking up a lot of XP, and you have a Yang, and you have a Fu. You're winning the third act of the race pretty well. Oh, I think we heard Dia.
Yes. Hi.
Congratulations, GG.
Thank you.
The first question, what were you when you ran that Sheila 1 check when you already have everything, or were you hoping for an adamant armor, or were you looking to get more characters, or because that turned out better than
I was looking for a weapon for Edge actually, because I hadn't found a Tele yet, and since I didn't have a source of weak, I wanted to be able to make sure I could still get through bosses easy.
Yeah, that was something Simbu mentioned to us in his interview, was because he actually found the Edward to go with his spoon, and one of the things he commented on was he actually ditched Edge, and it was like, well, I don't have any good weapons for Edge, and so I need somebody to be a physical DPS. In my case, it was Edward, but he said he was also looking around, maybe not to the extent that you did, but he was looking for those good Edge weapons as well.
Yeah. And I don't think I had the spoon by the time I found Edward, or I would have kept him forward as well.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly where that spoon came from, but I think Simbu had the spoon and then went back and rescued Eddie from Mysidia before going up to do his D Machine grind.
I forgot Rescue was on. That's good.
Yeah, it was really interesting to watch your race. One of the things you'll see when you watch back, if you watch the VOD later, is you were about a minute to, I would say 1 to 5 minutes ahead of Simbu, pretty much the entire step of the way, including into the Zeromus fight.
Wow.
Yeah, you were like one boss ahead through most of the subterranean. I think you finished your D Machine grind a few minutes before him. But I think he got a little more XP out of the D Machine grind than you did, and I think that it sort of just smoothed out his experience the rest of the way.
I think what the bigger thing would have been is he probably didn't have to deal with what I did, where I only got the XP on one of my palms. Like if I had that second palm,
I noticed that as
Yeah,
you finished
Virus.
the D Machine.
Whoops.
So we were wondering if that was for anchoring or if that was just one of the same mistakes that everybody makes every single time you risk going into a D Machine grind.
That was just one of those mistakes. I was playing on like you saw, I queued up a life potion on the palm. I was going to pull off Telda after he cast Weak, but I cast Virus earlier in the fight, and that meant the HP just ran out immediately.
Yeah, it was just it's definitely one of those things that happens. We've seen that before, and yeah, it's just we were kind of wondering if that's what happened, and it did turn out to be a little bit of a mess. It didn't seem bad until you got to the Zeromus fight, and then I'm just not sure if maybe your agility situation was a little bit
It was the
wonky.
agility. I was at a 19 anchor on that problem. The second time go around, I was at 17 agility because I kept him fed through the LST fights.
Yeah, that'll do it. That's tough, and it's interesting. Sometimes when you get into these faster races, or maybe there's other considerations as well, but a lot of times you don't get the luxury of like hand picking your agility anchor like you do in maybe some of the other flag sets or some of the more like the seeds where you end up having to do a lot more of the game than this one. But yeah, that was kind of a throwback to maybe a time when people didn't understand agility anchoring as well, and you would just sort of like get into the Zeromus fight, and suddenly it's like, oh man, you can't really control the fight because he just goes so fast.
It was very. I mean, it was very entertaining seeing you get in there first with a slightly, because Simbu had a few hundred XP or HP. I'm sorry. Over you on a couple. I mean, you had mostly the same characters if you swap out the Edge and the Eddie. But you got in there first, and he got in there later with a little more HP. And I was rooting for you to get through it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those, tortoise in the hare.
Yeah, I knew one of them, like Invin, simply someone was gonna be right there with me. So I knew that if I wanted to win, I basically had to just skip the save and just go for it. Which it was the right call.
It was definitely the right play.
Just shouldn't have lost to the C fight.
Yeah, you gotta appreciate somebody who is gonna play to win like that, and it's unfortunate that it got a little bit out of your control. It seemed like again there was maybe an issue with like a virus early on, so maybe that's kind of like the story of the seed for you tonight. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, still got 4th place in it, so can't be really too upset.
Oh, absolutely. You played
ran that
great
very
for
well.
sure.
Well, that adamant, I mean, surprised if anyone else. I mean, it didn't cost you that much time to make that play, and it really, really paid off, because particularly with those behemoths.
Yeah.
When I didn't realize I had forgotten that you had it, and then when I saw the damage your Edge was doing, that really changes it when your Edge is putting out that much damage against the behemoths, because that speeds those fights up just dramatically.
And those behemoths were the reason I was looking for Edge clears, because like you need to get through those with physical damage pretty much, so you better find something.
Yeah, and meanwhile those counter punches were doing a whole like 1 damage, so
Yeah.
that was also pretty nice too. So But yeah, it was a great race. I really thought you had it. It's unfortunate that it just didn't go your way in the Z fight, but really, really nice job tonight, and great race. Do you have any other thoughts or anything on the seed that you want to mention? Maybe something that we missed or didn't talk about?
Nothing I can think about. Just thanks to you guys for the commentary. Thanks to Snapey for the race stream. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for running on stream tonight, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Take
You
care.
too. Thanks. Bye.
All right, and ducking back in here, we have got WooBear in the Z fight. Looks like Yang is doing a lot of heavy lifting here, and maybe
Woober with the comeback story. This is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have a talk with WooBear here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you that right now.
This is going to be interesting. And I think, again, I mean, the fact that he ended up with 10 key items, you know, very well sort of just escalated his, you know, the third act of this, which he was the only one who was really a third act. For everyone else, it was one act. But for him, he's just, you know, it allowed him to just speed his way through the remainder of this. And we still have more than half of our racers left overall. So you know, I mean, you weren't going to be competing for first, but you certainly still didn't finish last.
Well, I mean, I think we all know that WooBear is a top runner. He was a big contender in the Highway to the Zenith Zone League Season 2, and yeah, there's that crack boom, and WooBear crosses the finish line with a time of 1:31.09. So GG's to WooBear. We will get him in here in just a minute or two, and yeah, we're gonna have a chat with Mr. WooBear.
I mean, 130. When I ran some of these when they first announced the seeds, I mean, 130 sub 130 is really like sort of where you're setting your bar. It's like, you know, the old Zemazone flags where you're saying like, well, if I full clear and I do it in under 2 hours, then, you know, I don't feel terrible. But even with everything that was available, 130, considering all of that additional time spent, that's a great time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this was just a pretty classic. I mean, didn't even 17 out of 17. I don't know. WooBear, what's going on?
The guy went and played music for us. What? I mean, you can't discount the value of that. WooBear, thank you so much for joining us. First off, thank you for the music. We would have been just tuneless without you.
I figured at that point I had no chance of winning, so I may as well be the people's champion. And
huge people's champion play when we saw you leave with the darkness and just immediately go over. So thank you, and GG.
Thank you.
So was that the moment when you realized that you hadn't checked the Edward in the bed when he arose and went off to go play that awesome song for us?
No, like I poured it out before I even got to that point. I was like, yeah, I remembered, because I did this on Monday. It was the exact same flags. I don't know how I forgot, but basically like it queued in like, wait a minute, there was free characters, so usually when there's free characters, there's also a free bedward.
That's what Blaze had said. I was hoping you would run into D-Mist at a very early spot.
I looked.
When we noticed. Yeah, and then that would at least have triggered it. But
yeah,
I mean, you still finish in the top half of the runners who were in this, so yeah.
I was figuring, so you went and you looted Troy Castle, and then you got the Earth Crystal, and you it was the third time that was a charm. No, I mean seriously, we're just giving you a little bit of crap.
Oh, no,
it was actually really fun to see.
It's the
Because
same thing. He was like, usually, you know, like it's the free characters that usually sort of like trigger you thinking, well, maybe there's a free key item, but if anything, those 10 keys, I think you ended up with 10.
I did, yeah.
And you ended up lapping Valvalis, basically, who was stuck on the behemoth fights for a while.
Yeah, those were a little annoying. I figured first one I would use Spoon, try and get out of the way, get some experience, because I didn't do any grind, right? And that wasn't too bad, but yeah, they're very annoying with that. I didn't have any weapons for Edge, so he's basically just riding on Adamant the whole time.
Yeah, the thing with that sparse 30 flag set is it really didn't give you a lot of great options for DPS tonight. A couple life staffs I think was the best we saw in terms of like the super high end gear.
There was no I know it was 30, but there's no way that was 30%. There was nothing.
I think you were the first runner I saw that ran down to the Damsien basement, and it was literally nothing. And I started laughing.
I went to Troya. I think there was one chest in all of Troya, and I was like, okay, I'm desperate. I'm gonna go to Watery Cave because it's been nice to me, and there's 2 chests with 40 gold in it or something. I was like, oh my.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot to work with.
Sparse was a very real term for this race. And if anything that we should also thank you for, or maybe you spoiled a lot of who the moon bosses were going to be by running through it like that.
By doing everything else, every other boss fight.
But we're like, oh, there's Knazo, so he's not on the moon.
Yeah, I think that was the big one. I think everybody else spoiled Golbez at the top of ordeals, but yeah, Knazo was the one that I remember too, just being like, dang it. I guess we don't have to worry about running into that up there.
Yeah, they were annoying, the moon bosses, but not with Adamant armor it was whatever. But CPU is kind of annoying, Evil Wolf. But again, Adamant kind of negates that whole thing. Yeah, but no, I had it all mapped out, man. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a Tella, and I get a Tella. I'm so happy. I get an Edward with Adamant or Edge with Adamant. I'm so happy. Okay, I'm like, boom, D-Machine grind into Moon into clear. And it's like, okay, where's Dark?
I was gonna feel real bad if the one thing you didn't do is Shield 1.
No, I did that almost
that would have been the added armor. Okay. Yeah. No, okay, that's right. There were 2 of you. Because Dia also did it.
I think that's just another example of how that early Magma Key can really throw things off too, because it's like, you sort of have, like you said, sort of set points in your mind where it's like, okay, I gotta do this stuff, and then I'll have Underground, and then it's like, okay, at some point I'll have the Darkness Crystal, and I gotta figure out how to beat the bosses. But then it's like, oh man, I'm starting with the Magma Key, I can go anywhere, and it does kind of scramble the circuit sometimes where it's like, what else do I want to do now?
Oh yeah, especially when again, Adamant armor, Edge kind of negates a lot, but when you get Underground early, you're still a low level in those situations, right? So it's like, what can I do? Maybe I should look for a free boss, get some experience. So it definitely trips you up a little bit.
Yeah, but all in all, you sort of took the scenic route tonight, but thank you so much for the music. Thank you for letting us watch your race tonight, and GG's on a nice finish, and guaranteed, higher completion percentage than most of the other folks. So, letting the race...
Almost anyone, because I think the only thing I didn't do was Baron Key.
Oh, you get that Baron Key, and I said I hope Demas is there if he ends up going to Baron Key. But no, yeah. Hey,
yeah, you kept our tracker on his toes tonight. Smapey thought he was going to have an easy night after the Magma Key Darkness Crystal start, but oh no, here comes Woo Bear.
Well, like I said, if I couldn't win, I'm glad I could, people champion and kind of keep people entertained.
Yeah, absolutely,
Thanks
man.
again.
Thank you so much for coming in and doing
131. You really turned in.
Thank you.
Yeah, nicely done. Yeah, have a good rest of your evening.
You too. Good night.
All right, and ducking back into the race action here, we've got Volvalis finishing off the dolls and looking pretty solid to move on to Zeromus, I would think, after this. So he is finishing up his run for the evening. We've only had one other finisher since Woobear. Poidrak finished in 7th place with a time of 1:31:20. So GG's to you, good chap, and thank you for coming out tonight.
Good job for Poidrak. Yeah, I wouldn't think that this E fight's gonna prove too difficult for Val here.
Yeah, it looked like he had a pretty good setup with Rosa, and I believe he's right. Yeah, his Edge looked like Edge had the levels. I'm pretty sure his Palom has Nuke now, so looks like maybe gonna run. But he
Yeah,
did
gonna
get his
take
crystal.
save.
Got to take that safety save. You never wanna. You don't wanna do that at this point, especially if it's just you're
not
kind of
playing
finishing up anyway.
Yeah, you're not playing for first. Looks like maybe gonna grind a little more just out of. Oh, you got one siren left.
Yeah, and his let me see his levels here. His bottom Palom, yeah, his Paloms both should have Nuke already. Maybe that bottom one doesn't, but pretty darn close.
It definitely took a fun gamble to see. Maybe didn't pay out exactly as you might have hoped. But that's, I mean, that was always from the beginning with those, knowing those behemoths are blocking Bahamut, that you want to go top down in the lunar subterranean. It's tough, particularly with the lack of physical damage that we've had from basically everyone this seed.
Yeah, and I appreciate the effort, that he put into that. And I think it was a pretty inventive strategy. It just didn't work out. I think you get that first behemoth under your belt, it does set you up in pretty good shape, and it just didn't quite work out. So, but yeah, it's kind of like what we said a little earlier on in the broadcast, which was you've basically got this puzzle, and the main puzzle of this seed in particular, where you had the darkness crystal right away, is I need 1,000,000 XP or however much it is to get to Zeromus ready levels, and what's my path to get that XP that I need? And we saw Simbu and Dia do the D machine grind for most of it. I think that proved to be the most clear-cut way, but there were certainly some options and some ways that Valvalis might have been able to, if he got the ball rolling with that first behemoth, and maybe ran into like an easy boss or something, there's definitely other ways to put that puzzle together that could have been a little bit faster in the long run.
We use snowballs to me XP, but they're also, as far as the bosses went on the moon, they might not have been the most difficult bosses, but they were certainly not free bosses for an underleveled party.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest boss we saw was the one that was right at the very end, which is the Calbraina dolls, and they don't even really give a ton of XP just because of the way the formula works for that particular boss fight. So, yeah, there really wasn't
repeatedly, for a low-level party at least.
Absolutely. So yeah, there just wasn't like a really good shortcut other than doing that D machine grind, which Simbu even mentioned in his interview is like lost some of the appeal because you don't get those amazing slingshots that you used to. But I think it did prove to be the best way through the seed, even considering the fact that we did see like early sirens, and it seemed like people had at least an hourglass or two in their inventories, so those must have been either in chests or available somewhere as well. So
Alice ended up with several of them, and I'm not sure where they came from. He at least, I don't know, at least I saw him do several dragons, and he had one for each of them.
Yeah, so maybe they were for sale somewhere. I personally didn't. Okay, Koidrak saying they were sold on the moon. But yeah, like there were some other ways that maybe it could have gone a little faster. But I really like the way that Valvalis tried to exploit something and try something different. Darting that spoon and then trying to finish off that first behemoth. I thought that was actually really smart, and it just didn't work out. I'm not sure if it was due to his agility situation or just the behemoths are just a little bit too overpowerful in those situations, but it seemed at the time like it was like really heads up, and I appreciate that.
It didn't hit for nearly as much as I thought it was going to when he threw it, and I think that might have been a part of the thinking, is like, if this hits for quad 9s, then maybe only I have to do 5k more damage, and then it hit for 4,450, and now all of a sudden your edge is only doing 800 damage, and there's only so many lives you can throw out.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he had that adamant armor too, and I think that Behemoth's defense is just so high that with the edge weapons he had, it's like, yeah, I've got an adamant armor, but it was still only doing like a couple hundred damage a swing, unfortunately. And I suspect Valvalis did not think that was going to be the case.
I think it's safe to say that Valvalis suspected a few things that may not have prospered in the end of this, but I mean, part of the fun of running these things is, you know, each one is always going to be different. So, like, you know, you always got to test out some ideas if you're going to try to win. And, you know, they don't always work, but...
Absolutely, and yeah, you reminded me of a thought that I had earlier, which is just, you know, the reason that we've probably, like, I can just say for myself, like, I've never fought a behemoth at low levels like that. And it's usually because most of the time the game doesn't put you in situations where that's even something you would even consider. So just the fact that, you know, this is a pretty rare occurrence, it's probably not something most other people have done before either. But the fact that Valvalis had a strategy and he's like, I thought it might work, you know, that it's really cool to see people trying new things like that in a race environment like this. So.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, one or two things fall the right way, and even if you just get access to that third floor of Bahamut, then you can grind right there. Barely is concerned, you know, about having to go all the way over to the lunar subterrane and then back. I mean, I think the idea of getting right through that first behemoth with, you know, anything possible that you had available was something I definitely would have tried.
Yeah, and one thing I will mention, just because I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but if you use a siren on the second floor of Cave Bahamut, you would actually get that double gold dragon fight as well, so it's not just the third floor.
Really?
Yep.
I'm so used to not having those behemoths or anything that you check the boss and then you look, but I'm gonna have to ferret that information away for later use at some point. Look like too much trouble here in the final fight.
No, this is looking pretty by the book and pretty smooth so far. So Pongamus is, I don't think, going to be able to keep that two score lead. So, and of course we see Tella on the ground acting as our paddle on our end here.
So Tella's been having a bad day for everyone, and I have to appreciate that. Valvalis named Tella anchor, and Tella is currently just anchoring the floor.
Tella was actually the MVP. Like, none of the things that our runners did in this seed, like the D-Machine grind and, you know, what Valvalis is doing right here, you don't get to do any of that without that Tella, so let's give him a little bit of credit where credit is due tonight.
Yeah, everyone in this game can serve their purpose. I think Simbu keeps proving that to me, even though in my own mind I'm like, yeah, Eddie's not good for anything. Just going and pulling that. So really, it's just, I mean, there are creative reasons to use everyone. I mean, maybe Telos isn't the most creative, but these people know what they're doing.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And it looks like Valvalis has finished up here. There we go. I had to refresh my screen there.
I did that as well.
Coming on through with a time of 1:47:55, and we'll see if we can get him in here for a quick interview.
We will see. Still a good time. 8th place, so, you know, obviously these seeds, as easy as these people made them look, are not exactly something that you just, you know, huff and puff and blow your way through.
Definitely not.
And let's see what he says. Yeah. Either way, please do give a follow to Smapty and Scala. They've done a great job The tracking volunteering maybe didn't take too much effort, but certainly nailed it in following Woobear around.
That is for sure. And yeah, please give a follow to all of our runners, as well as those of us, behind the scenes helping out tonight, if you feel so inclined. And thank you so much, Randomania, for hosting us this evening. And we do have Valvalis here in chat with us as well. Valvalis, GG's. I'm sure you've got some mixed
Yeah.
feelings on that seed, but overall, nicely done. And there's a couple specific things you did that I thought were really cool tonight. So.
I mean, I don't have any mixed feelings. I haven't played Free Enterprise very much recently just because, real life gets in the way. And I was just like, oh, these flags look like fun. I want to join in. And I thought I had a really good strategy and then just executed really poorly.
So, specifically, what you're referring to, is it having to do with those behemoth fights in Cave Bahamut, or is it something else? Because it seemed like you had an alternate theory of how to get the XP that you needed, and that was one of the things we were talking about. The D Machine grind was pretty much there for anybody who wanted it, but you wanted to just kind of attack the moon, and you decided to walk up to a big behemoth with your lower level party and see how that went. So how did that go, and what did you think about going into that?
To be quite honest, I just forgot that I don't have my D Machine map, so I couldn't go do it. So I was like, oh well, I have a couple other ideas I want to try. I mean, the races are for fun, so let's give it a try. It didn't work out, so I had to come up with another idea. It worked out ultimately in the end. It was a little bit painful because Evil Wall, Ruby, I would say Wyvern, but Wyvern with Whichburn is not a threat. It's just those two bosses specifically were really rude, and then Tella getting more experience than I intended just made things even harder.
Definitely took the other three runners all went D Machine, so Woobear sort of took his own route, but it generally was pointing towards D Machine, and it was nice to have somebody else to watch who was just willing to go up there and see what they could make. And yeah, the moon bosses themselves didn't really, you didn't get a great draw as far as what I think you were going for when the behemoth fight didn't work. But it was, I thought it was a good idea. Just, it doesn't always work the way that you intended to.
Yeah, like, just to be clear, I mean, we saw you dart the spoon at that first behemoth and then get going on it, and we were like, oh wow, I've never seen this before, but this seems like it could definitely work, and that's really interesting. So it's one of those things that's probably a situation you've never been in before, and I know, like, speaking for myself, I've certainly never been in a situation where I needed to fight a behemoth for experience at low levels before, so it was really cool to see something new, and we were thinking that was gonna actually pay off and be a really good thing that you were doing there.
If I would have gotten Blinks up a little bit sooner, I think it could have worked, and I like the idea. Again, it just boiled down to execution, and I'm not remotely upset, because once I got going, I got everything running, but I see some of the things I needed to work on, like specifically, I should have, as I was going through the overworld, I should have done my shopping right away and some of the looting earlier, so I had the money and I could have got to the moon a little bit sooner and figured out some other things. But I spent so much time like bouncing back and forth, and then when I got there, I don't think I had Blink on Rosa quite yet, and Tella was just dead.
You haven't been running recently. I mean, you can definitely excuse that because a lot of things have changed, particularly with the sparse looting and the shops and everything else. So it's a whole new world out there in Free Enterprise, and it's fun. It's fun to watch everybody try to figure out how to change everything, because we were so used to seeing everybody do the same thing. I mean, you were a hair's breadth away from getting through and into the the depths of the lunar subterranean before everyone else, so it was close.
Yeah, I didn't notice that the 30% loot was on, and that kind of caught me off guard when I went into the Troya. So I think that kind of influenced me a little bit too. But no, I like the idea because I had a spoon edge that's going to do, roughly 6,000 damage to a behemoth, and I think they've got around 20,000 HP, something like that. And I thought I could get through it, but just really a little bit of mismanagement on my side. And I went against Simbu, Invenerable, Woobear, Dia, and there's a lot of fantastic runners in here who are always running. So a 147, that's kind of what I estimated I'd get. So I'm really happy with how I did, and I appreciate being able to get restreamed when I do get to run.
Yeah, absolutely, and for sure, like there was a lot of stuff we saw that was really good. It was another one of those awkward seeds where you have so many options to start at the very beginning, and those seeds can be complicated because it's like, okay, now how do I get to the end of the game from this point of view where I can go, or from this point where I can go pretty much anywhere. And I thought all of those decisions were really solid, and your Z fight in particular was silky smooth, so that was really good as well. So yeah, just a ton of stuff that was really nice to see. GG's overall. And did you have any other thoughts or comments on the race tonight?
Couple things. Make sure you have your D machine map if you're going to have something where you get that early access, because it's just too good. And then, of course, thank you so much for letting me be restreamed, Scala for doing the restream, Smape D pressing buttons behind the scene, and of course you two doing commentary.
Yeah, absolutely happy to help, and thank you for allowing your race to be restreamed tonight. It was a lot of fun to watch, and GG's again.
Thank you, GG.
GG.
All right, and with that, I think that is going to wrap for us tonight. We will be back with another community race here on the Randomania family of channels next week. I believe it's the day after Thanksgiving here in the U.S., and so that'll be a fun one. A lot of people maybe down to race after a big, long day, or kicking off the holiday weekend, or kicking back and relaxing after a big old turkey day. So that should be a fun one, I think, next week.
I'll hopefully be around for it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Blaze, for commentating with me and having me, and Scala, and Smapedy, and everybody watching.
Yeah, thank you as well. Nice job. First time on the mic, and fantastic job, PK. Nice job tonight.
Blaze, yeah, I got nothing left. Thanks again, and you all have a good night.
Yeah, and we are actually going to go ahead and raid. We have one of our we have a Twitch streamer out there playing free enterprise, Eagle Falcon. So we are wrapping up here, and we are going to go ahead and raid over to twitch.tv/Eagle Falcon, and enjoy that, everybody. Take care and have a nice evening.